So I'll read the verse once again. While living, one may be proud of one's body, thinking oneself a very big man, minister, president, or even demigod. But whatever one may be, after death, this body will turn either into worms, into stool, or into ashes. If one kills poor animals to satisfy the temporary whims of the body, one does not know that he will suffer in his next birth. For such a sinful miscreant must go to hell and suffer the results of his actions. Oh, I forgot in the beginning. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Sorry about that. These Zoom classes sometimes make me forget what's happening in the world. Okay, so this is one of those verses that devotees love when verses like this come up when it's their turn to give Bhagavatam class, because there's so much reference material on these topics. It's not, sometimes we come across a Bhagavatam verse and it's hard to figure out what we're going to talk about for this amount of time. This particular verse, we can talk about for, years actually. So, but what I'm going to do is not what most normal people would do when they come across a verse like this. So for example, the first sentence, right? There's two sentences. The first sentence, while living, one may be proud of one's body, thinking oneself a very big man, minister, president, or even demigod. But whatever one may be, after death, this body will turn into either worms, stool, or ashes. So that's the first sentence. So plenty of source material there about how, this life is temporary and it doesn't matter how much you accumulate. At the time of death, it all goes away. So it doesn't matter, right? There's a lot of reference material there from all of the acharyas and how to not waste this human form of life. Srila Prabhupada speaks about this often. And then, of course, the second sentence, if one kills poor animals to satisfy the temporary whims of the body, one does not know that he will suffer in the next birth. For such a sinful miscreant must go to hell and suffer the results of his actions. This, again, is another one that most people really love to talk about. In fact, let's see, when I was in college, we had many different, there's English classes where you have to write papers, and then there are also speech classes where you have to do public speaking and you have to talk about certain things. And this is kind of one of those topics that it's okay to do in a college course. You're not really supposed to talk about religion per se, but you can certainly talk about vegetarianism, the impact on the world that it has, the karmic implications that it has, etc. Things like that you can talk about. So this topic I definitely spoke a whole lot on. But I'm not going to do that either in this class. What I want to focus on, and what I focus on often, is details and principles. So if you've heard a class of mine, you've probably heard me speak about details and principles. But it's worth talking about a lot because we tend to get distracted by things in this world. And so it's important to understand this so that we can constantly make sure that we're on the right path, on the path that we think we're on anyway. Because on the spiritual path, there's this danger that while on the spiritual path, or while considering ourselves on the spiritual path, while thinking that we are on a spiritual path, we can get distracted, still think that we're on the path, but actually be doing something else. And this is the exact reason why in the first canto of Srimad Bhagavatam, we find that Srila Vyasadeva, after compiling all of the Vedas, aside from the Bhagavat Purana, the Srimad Bhagavatam, he was feeling despondent. He was thinking, I've compiled all these Vedic literatures, but somehow there's this empty feeling inside of me. I don't know what it is, but I feel that I haven't accomplished my goal yet. And so he was speaking to his spiritual master, Narad Muni, and he pointed out, well, you've presented the Vedic philosophy, but with all of the different exceptions, the exceptions to the rules and regulations and all the different liberties that are given on the spiritual path, you're going to confuse people because they're going to get distracted by these things. Because on the spiritual path, there are certain details that are there to sort of attract people from ordinary life into spiritual life, right? And it brings you in that direction into spiritual life. But there's also a danger when presenting something in that way, that people who are in spiritual life, instead of continuing in that direction, can be distracted by those details and sort of veer off, sometimes seemingly backwards, back into the material life, and while thinking that they're engaging in spiritual activities. So that was Narada Muni's assessment, the Guru's assessment. That's another topic we'll talk about more of today. In the purport, Srila Prabhupada talks about the importance of a guru. So we're going to talk about that more too. But this sense of despondency that Srila Vyasadeva had was because of, those distractions that can come up in the name of spirituality. We think we're practicing spirituality, but what we're doing is becoming distracted. And so the most common example of that, and the one that's spoken of in this verse, the second sentence of the verse, is vegetarianism, not killing animals just for our personal whims. My body's feeling weak. I need to give it some energy. I need to eat something. I need to give it fuel. So, I grew up in the West, and in the West, meat, that's just food. That's what's on the plate. That's what's for dinner. And so, due to our personal whims, we think, okay, I need some energy. I got to eat. Got to eat some meat. So, and vegetarianism is certainly, we can say, most people would say it's a part of spirituality, because there's four legs of religion, and if you're killing animals, then clearly there's no compassion there. So if you don't have compassion, then it's very difficult to understand God. That argument's there, it's valid, but vegetarianism in itself is not a spiritual thing. It's a side effect of becoming spiritually advanced relative to where we were. So as we make spiritual progress, we start seeing things more clearly, and we understand that it's actually, not only is it unnecessary for us to kill animals in order to live, but it's also detrimental to our spiritual growth, that it's holding us back, because we're performing a very discompassionate thing, just for, just like this purport says, by whim, by personal whim. So what happens there is, as we're advancing in spirituality, we start seeing these details as very important, and we start seeing them as part of the spiritual process. We start seeing them as spiritual in and of itself. The fact that we don't eat meat, that we're kind to animals. And so the danger there is, if we don't make the connection, if we don't actually make the connection to spirituality, and we're not doing this thing consciously for the sake of spiritual advancement, for the sake of getting closer to Krishna, then, sorry, I have to plug in my computer here. Then we pay more attention to the material aspect of being a vegetarian than we do of the spiritual aspect of, understanding God more. And so, for example, there are those who, instead of, so they're on the spiritual path, they've begun spiritual life, they're very interested in advancing toward Krishna, and they've given up meat early on. And if the focus isn't on spirituality, and the focus is more on the detail, like I said, of being a vegetarian, then one could one could take it like a step further. So we see that, there's vegetarians, right? But then there's also vegans. They don't drink milk or honey or anything like that. Anything that comes from an animal, they don't use. And then beyond that, there are fruitarians. Not only do they not eat those things, but they won't. Fruitarians won't eat something if it kills the plant. So in other words, if a plant is bearing fruit and it's giving the fruit without destroying itself, then you can eat it. But if, for example, a lot of vegetables are actually the plant itself is the vegetable. So if you take that, then you're killing the plant. So fruitarians won't even do that because, they don't want to destroy the life of that plant. It's fine. They'll take an apple because the tree's still there and it'll continue giving apples. And in fact, it'll drop them on the ground for you. You don't even have to pull it from the tree. And then there are also people like many of the Jains, they walk around with a face mask. That was before COVID. And they'd be sweeping in front of themselves as they're walking so they don't step on any living entities. So there's different ways to get distracted by these things. And of course, if you think about them logically, these are good things. We don't want to kill any living entities unnecessarily. So sweeping in front of you, sure, that makes sense. It can make some sense. Or, not eating a plant that, that it's actually going to kill the entire plant, that can make some sense. But the point is, when we start gauging what we can or cannot do by our personal whims and logic like that, then we become completely distracted from what is actually important. And that is to understand Krishna and to develop our relationship with him. So that is why it is extremely important to approach a spiritual master. That's what the verse was in there from the 11th canto. Tasmad Gurum Prapadeta. It's very similar to a verse from the Bhagavad Gita, 434. Tadvidi pranipatena pariprashanena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam gyarinas tattvadarshana. If you want to learn the truth, you should approach a spiritual master. You should inquire from him submissively, not just, there's this common saying out there these days, question authority. Of course, the meaning behind that most people use is to actually question why someone has authority and why should I, accept what you're saying. But just the term itself, question authority, actually makes some sense, because if someone is an actual authority on something and you want to also know about that, you should question them, but it should be done in a submissive way, not in a challenging way. So inquire from them submissively and render service unto them. The self-realized souls can impart knowledge unto you because they have seen the truth. So the guru is an expert in spiritual matters. So if we want to understand spirituality better, then it is in our best interest to approach a spiritual master, a bona fide spiritual master, submit submissive inquiries to them, and also render some service. This is how the process of devotional service works. And when we do this, the guru who has seen the truth, who understands the process of spiritual advancement, can lead us properly without becoming distracted. So he can show us that, the most important part of progressing spiritually is focusing on Krishna and doing what pleases him instead of what pleases us. So if we are taking vegetarianism, for example, if we are taking that to an unnecessary extreme and we're not seeing that connection anymore, we may think that we're on this spiritual path, but we're actually sort of veering off because our personal whim is more important than what is actually true, what is actually presented by the spiritual master and by Krishna. And so that's the danger there. So this verse, most people know this one. Patram pushpam palam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati tadaham bhakti paritam asnami prayatatmanaha. If one, this is Krishna speaking to Arjuna, and it's also, that verse appears in the 10th canto of Bhagavatam later, in the later chapters. If one offers me with love and devotion a fruit, flower, leaf, or water, I will accept it. So this is a verse that many devotees use to show, okay, this is what can be offered to Krishna: leaf, flower, fruit, water. Krishna doesn't accept meat, so there we go. We don't eat meat. But the most important part of this verse is the word bhakti, isn't it? Twice. So patram pushpam phalam toyam yo me bhaktya prayachati, and then tadaham bhakti upahritam asnami prayatatmana. Bhakti is in there twice, which means the most important thing that Krishna is accepting is our bhakti. It's not that, of course, we want to offer him the best leaf, the best fruit that we can access, the best of the flowers and the water. We don't want to give him water from a mud puddle. We'd like to give him the cleanest water possible and the most fragrant or most beautiful flowers that we have access to, like that. But the most important part is the bhakti. So we can also be distracted by that. Let's say, for example, we want the best flower, for example, right? So Krishna will accept the flower, but if we get caught up in, well, I'm going to find the best flower, which is okay because Krishna deserves the best flower. But if our consciousness is that it's me finding the best flower, therefore I am, the best servant. If that's our attitude, if that's our mentality, then we're distracted. It should be that we should find the best things for Krishna, but it shouldn't be about us. It should always be about Krishna. And that's the point of this verse. And then I think it's actually the next verse in Bhagavad Gita: Yat karosi yadasnasi yajdu hosi dadasi yat tat tapasyasi kontaya, or yat tapasyasi kontaya tat karusva mad arpanam. That whatever you do, whatever you eat, whatever you offer or give away in charity, whatever sacrifices you perform, do that, O son of Kunti, for me. Krishna is saying that not only what you're eating you should give to Krishna, but anything, whatever you're doing, whatever you're giving away, whatever austerities you perform, do it for me. So the principle is that whatever you're doing, you do it for Krishna. It's not for us, it's for Krishna. Let's see, I'm going to go back to today's word. Remember the word sva-artam I said was an interesting word, self-interest. If we're doing things for our own self-interest, then that's actually not spiritual life. What was the other one that I liked? Bhuta Druk, a person who does not accept the shastric injunctions and is unnecessarily envious of other living entities, right? So, when we read, I'm going to read that second sentence again. If one kills poor animals to satisfy temporary whims of his body, one does not know that he will suffer in his next birth. For such a sinful miscreant must go to hell and suffer the result of his actions. So the detail in that sentence is killing the animals and, going to hell because of it. The principle, however, in this verse is anyone, whether it's killing an animal or killing a plant, the person that does not accept the shastric injunctions and is unnecessarily envious of other living entities, and when one acts in that way in a sva-artam, with self-interest, then those people are also going to hell, whether it's, like I said, whether it's an animal they're killing or whether it's a plant that they're killing. We also have this verse in Bhagavad Gita, I think it's 3:13. Yajna shishtasya santo muchante sarvakila bisai bunjate te tvagam papa ye pachantyat makaranat. That the devotees of the Lord are released from all kinds of sin because they eat food which is first offered in sacrifice. Others who eat food merely for sense enjoyment verily eat only sin. So that verse doesn't say, if you're eating meat, you're eating sin. It says if you're eating meat, if you're eating anything for sense gratification, then you're eating sin. And the only reason that devotees are freed from sinful reaction is because they're first offering it in sacrifice. So we see there that it's not what you're eating that's determining whether you're gonna, suffer a reaction for it, but it's whether it's been offered or not, whether it's been offered to Krishna or not, whether you have your self-interest in mind or whether you have the interest of Krishna in mind. It's really as simple as that. When, Srila Prabhupada named his movement the International Society for Krishna Consciousness being the key word there, that we're always meant to be conscious of Krishna. Our lives are meant to be centered around what Krishna desires instead of what we whimsically desire. And that's the whole point of Krishna consciousness. And of course, there are various details to get us from where we are now to where we want to be, various details that we can follow to help us out along the way. But if we get caught up in those details, as I mentioned, we can think that we're on the spiritual path, but actually be, stalled out, not making any advancement whatsoever, because we're more focused on a personal whim than we are on the actual process of spiritual enlightenment. And so, again, that is why it is important to have the instructions of the spiritual master and also of other sadhus and the Shastra, Guru, Sadhu, Shastra. These three are extremely important. And what I've come to understand is that although it's Guru, Sadhu, Shastra, there's three things. If you really break it down, it's actually Shastra, Shastra, and Shastra, because, there's the Shastra. This is the word that comes down from Krishna. That's what we follow. Then the Guru, he's the one who understands the Shastra and explains it to us, but he's only speaking according to Shastra. He doesn't speak according to his whim, right? And the same with the sadhus, the fellow aspiring devotees. They're also only repeating what their Guru said and what their Shastra said. So it's Shastra, Shastra, and Shastra presented to us in three different ways. But if we act in any other way, then we're acting according to our whim. In the purport, as Srila Prabhupada mentioned, we want to become acharyavan, controlled by the acharya, because when one is conducted by rajogun and tamagun, one does not care about anything. Instead, one acts like an ordinary foolish animal, risking his life, and therefore continuing to go through suffering after suffering, mrityu samsara vartmani. So here, Srila Prabhupada is giving us these two ways of living. There's acharyavan, being, controlled by the acharya or submitting to the acharya, living according to his instructions. Or you can be living according to the modes of material nature that we've acquired based on our previous activities. Unfortunately, there's no third option. If we're not acting according to the Guru and according to the Shastra, then we're acting according to our own whims. And if we act according to our own whims, we're not going to make spiritual advancement. It's impossible. So when we come across verses like this, they may seem, when we read them, we may think, all right, well, I'm in good shape, because I no longer kill animals for whimsical, because of the demands of my whimsical body. And so, I'm doing pretty good. We might think that. We might read this verse and think that, and we might, want to go out and preach to those who are killing animals, and we want to change their minds, which, that's also a good thing to spread Krishna consciousness, to, spread the awareness of Krishna and to bring lost, fallen souls back to him. But if we think for a second, when we read verses like this, that we are in good shape or in superior, or we've reached a goal, then we're seriously an illusion. It's not a goal to be vegetarian. It's a goal to re-enter our relationship with Krishna. If we're doing anything according, based on our sense gratification and not based on Krishna, then we're going to suffer a result from that. It may not be as bad as the result that's going to be suffered by the person who's killing animals just to, maintain his body. But it will mean that we're in this material world still, suffering a reaction for not connecting something to Krishna. So it's dangerous to feel that we are in a position that we're not in. And that's, again, why Srila Vyasadeva was despondent when he compiled all of the Vedic literatures before the Bhagavad Purana. We are fortunate that we have the Bhagavad Purana and we have Srila Prabhupada to explain it to us properly. And we have our gurus to also clarify these points as well. And so we need to focus on that. We need to always remind ourselves that until we are 100% engaged in Krishna consciousness, seeing everything around us as Krishna, and all of our activities are focused around serving Krishna like that, until we reach that point, we haven't reached our goal yet. So we don't want to become distracted by the various details. We have to be very careful of that, because the way this philosophy was designed was specifically meant to not fall into that trap of becoming distracted by these different sort of like loopholes and rules and regulations, the exceptions and the like that. So I see that we're coming close to the end. We're actually coming to the end of our time. It looks like I have a question here, so I'm going to read that first, and then we'll see if anyone else has questions. This one's from Bob Hollowell. Hare Krishna, welcome. It says, I have a question as far as offering food to Krishna. Let's say I want a handful of peanuts. Do I offer that first? Okay. Do I offer that first? If I have a large container of peanuts, can I offer some to Krishna and then pour them back into the container, making the whole container prasadam? If I want a glass of water, do I offer that before drinking? These are great questions. So yeah, everything has to be offered. So there are a couple ways to do it. The way that you mentioned, you can offer some, you pour them back, and then the whole thing's offered. That's a fantastic way to do it. But you can also, let's say, if you have a deity at home and you want to make regular offerings to the deity, then you may also just offer that small amount, right? And then whatever that small amount is, that can go into some container that later gets, honored, while leaving the bigger container unoffered, so you can continue to offer these things to your deity. That's another way to do it. So you can either make the whole container prasadam by putting it back in, and then there it is, voila, then you can take your handful of peanuts. Or like I said, if you have the deity, then the deity has their own stuff. That's the boga before it gets offered, and then you take some, and then after it's offered, you put it to the side, and you can honor that, but not from there. So there's Krishna's, and then there's yours. And then the water also, yes. And anytime you not only eat or drink anything you do should be centered around Krishna. So that's why when we wake up, we put on our tilak. We always have our Tulsi neck beads on. Tulsi is a devotee of Krishna. No service can be done without the mercy of Tulsi Maharani. That's why when we make an offering to the deities in the temple, Krishna, he accepts the offering because there's the Tulsi leaf, there's the devotion that's being offered, there's the Tulsi. So everything actually revolves around Tulsi. Without her, bhakti can't fully take place. So everything happens through the mercy of devotees. But those are very good questions. Thanks for asking them. I hope I answered them for you. But yes, everything, even a glass of water, of course, offer that to Krishna. Are there any other questions? Looks like Renuka Valapru has her hand up. Yes.
I have a quick comment on today's lecture. First of all, thank you so much for today's lecture. It's I felt like it's very relevant to what's going on in the world right now. The whole coronavirus thing, which started off from the way the animals were killed, the bat and the virus, how it came, or I mean, whatever theories. This is one theory that that it all came from the distasteful practices of human beings and their eating habits. Let's say, if everyone was a vegetarian, this corona thing would not have happened.
Mm-hmm.
Let's go with that theory. So, and a lot of people have started become vegetarian during these times because they have started questioning their practices, like what are my eating habits, where is my meat coming from. uh, Consciously or unconsciously, people are going into this path of vegetarianism. So I thought like today's discussion about vegetarianism or veganism or fruitarianism is all like very relevant into today's scenario. And I lived in the Pacific Northwest, Seattle. So it's this whole vegan thing, like, you come from any part of the country and settle in Seattle, over a period of time, you'll be touched by this veganism and you'll become a vegan, like, I once remember this incident, like, in downtown Seattle, there is this homelessness problem. And, there are like lots of people who are not as privileged as the rest of us. And they'll be standing outside the sandwich shops and outside the grocery stores and all that. And the human instinct is, what is the best thing that I can buy with my $5? So you'll try to grab the cheapest sandwich, and you want to add a side for him also, like a drink or something, because you want to give him a good meal, right? So I used to go grab I used to think that this guy would prefer a chicken sandwich, and chicken sandwiches are much cheaper than the vegan version of the vegan version. And you come outside and you give it to him, and he says, "No, I'm vegan."
Yeah.
So even a free sandwich for that guy, he has to be vegan. Oh, yes, right, fine, okay. I wanted to give you a meal, so I'll go get the vegan, and it's like double the cost. Like so, this is how veganism has been like. So it's today's topic, like ring the bells from my Seattle memories, and today's very relevant to today's corona situation. And whenever there is a recall, there is a meat recall. It's all about, there are more meat recalls than fruit recalls or spinach recalls.
Yeah.
If you look at it that way. And thank you so much. And the one thing about whenever I go to the primary care physician checkup, she says, "Hey, your such and such a thing is so low. Why don't you start eating meat?" Like, I'm coming from a meat eating family. Like, our staple is meat. So I switch between spirituality, meat eating, because oh no, this is how I was raised. And now, because I'm into this for the past 1+ month or whatever, I'm not eating meat, and I'm not touching even egg. And but the rest of my family, my daughter, and they all eat. I mean, I don't, just because I'm Krishna conscious doesn't mean everyone has to abandon their normal lives and come into this path. This is my preference. Like, this is my preferred way of thinking. I'm still in the trial mode. But how do you address some of these primary care physician thoughts about hey, you're running low on iron, and you don't get the direct iron because you're not eating meat? So how do you address that?
Well,
Has anyone in
iron's actually higher in leafy greens than it is in meat. So if a healthcare professional is telling you that I mean, this is what they used to do a long time ago. They used to say you die without eating.
No, she still tells me the same thing even today. Like,
right, but so no, she's wrong. It's clear that she's wrong. You can get iron in leafy greens. You can also take supplements for it, but no, devotees have been vegetarian since time immemorial. No one's died because of it. I mean, you can live unhealthy being a vegetarian. You can, of course, you can eat chips all day. they're vegetarian. But no, if you can absolutely, vegetarianism is a much healthier lifestyle. But as I was mentioning today, we don't want to become distracted by that and think that that's actually the process, that just because we're vegetarian that we're following the spiritual process. We have to make that connection that this is for Krishna. And when we do that, then we start making advancement. And if we become distracted just by being vegetarian, we think that that is the goal and that's the be all end all, and now I'm better than everybody else. Even if it's, because there are so many things that it's better for. It's better for the environment. It's better for, karmic reaction. It's better for your health. It's better for like all these things. But that's not the reason why we do it. We do it because, this is what Krishna accepts. So this is what we give him. And that has to be the mentality, because if it's not, then as it said with the Bhagavad Gita 3:13, if we're not offering that food first in sacrifices, we're eating sin, whether it's a handful of peanuts or, Slim Jim. It's sin on a different level, but still it's sin. So the important part is the offering part, and we don't want to get distracted by, all the different things. But no, it's absolutely a fact that the vegetarian lifestyle is much healthier than eating meat. The body can't digest meat properly. It rots in the intestines. It causes cancer, things like that. So, they'll tell you about vitamins and this and that, and they might sound convincing, and they're probably convinced themselves. But if you actually look into it, it's not true. It's wrong.
So Bob Hollowell and myself, and both of us have the same question. So eating multivitamins or any kind of vitamins is anti-Krishna?
No, not necessarily. There's things that vitamins you can take. That's fine. It's better, obviously, to get all of the vitamins in their natural state. In other words, so like if you need iron, eat leafy greens. You don't need the supplement. But if you live in a place that doesn't have leafy greens and you're really concerned about it, you have a deficiency, you could take it. You take the supplement.
So some of these multivitamins or vitamins, the source is animal. So there are plant sourced ones too, because when you see them.
You choose the plant source ones. You don't take the you don't take the ones that come from animals.
Okay, thank you.
Sure.
Hare Krishna Prabhu, I have a question.
Yeah.
I was told that you practice the 4 regulative principles so that you make yourself conducive to understanding all this information that we're going to start learning.
Yes.
But you said at the beginning that becoming spiritual will make you understand why vegetarianism is. So again, your whole class was about not getting stuck on details. So I
Yes.
don't know if this is getting stuck on a detail,
no,
or is it?
That's a great question. I'm glad you asked it. So there's two sides of that. So it is true that as you advance in spiritual life, these things become clear and we know why we're doing them. There is also the sense of sometimes you have to start following a rule to understand it. So but you also don't want, like I said, so you also don't want to get distracted. So there's a really fine line of the right way to do this. So the 4 regulative principles are there because when you follow them, it's easier to get that clarity from spiritual life, right? So, and those things become clear pretty quickly, that you shouldn't kill animals, that you shouldn't take intoxications like that. Those things come pretty early on in spiritual development. But if you look at, Srila Prabhupada, when he came to America and he started preaching, the first thing he did was he had everyone start chanting Hare Krishna in the kirtan, and then, start doing this regularly, every day. When he held his first initiation, he said, by the way, you also have to give up, it was chanting first. It wasn't, you have to give up all this stuff, and then, and then you chant, no, it was chanting first. And then the devotees were already realizing, they already started to get this taste of, okay, no, this is an actual, this is a bona fide process. This is getting me somewhere. And then, oh, by the way, you have to give up these things. And he's telling hippies, that's who was there at the time. They were all about drugs and sex. That was their way of life. And he's telling, oh, by the way, you give these things up. And they happily did it. They gave it up because they got that clarification, that clarity. So, but sometimes, yes, sometimes it is important to start following the rule, even if you don't quite understand why you're following it, but because you know that it's going to help you toward a goal. So there is that knowledge of, it's going to help you toward a goal. So it's sort of like a scientific thing in the beginning, where you don't know exactly what's going to happen, but you have faith that if you do it, it'll become clear to you. It's like following a recipe. You don't know exactly what's going to happen, but you follow it anyway because you know what you want, the result that it says you're going to get. So at the beginning, it's kind of like a scientific experiment like that. We'll follow a rule that we're not quite ready for, but then as we go through, we see, oh yeah, why didn't that occur to me sooner, right? But other times there are things that we don't want to give up until we're absolutely ready, because if we do give them up before we're actually detached from them, then we'll just constantly be thinking about them. We'll be lamenting that, oh, why did I give that up? I appreciated it so much, and now I don't have it. And that's a danger too. So we have to do things in a way that's going to keep us progressing in spiritual advancement and not holding us back. So whether that means accepting a rule earlier or waiting until a little bit later, depending on what the rule is, we have to make that adjustment. But the guru, that's why the guru is there, because
it's funny, always looking down at the camera, like, what is this? Like kind
that
of
is actually a really good explanation. The 4 regulative principles was how we lived. I mean, I was always a vegetarian, never had alcohol, and everything else. So, but that it is the chanting that was what first helped me get there, because I was, it wasn't like I was giving up meat or giving up alcohol. Never did it. So it was, but making it all, Krishna Prasadam. Making whatever it is we do Krishna Prasadam. Now that made a difference. That is, Thank you very much, Prabhu.
Yes, thank you very much.
I have a follow-up comment.
Sure.
I'm in my mom's place right now, and we come from as I told, like, meat-eating family. The other day she made coconut crab curry, and that is like to die for. Like, it's my mom's recipe. And like, I was sitting at the table so tempted to eat it. My daughter was relishing it, my dad was eating it, my mom was eating it, and I was like this close. Can Krishna, can you just excuse me, this one crab curry? And like, I don't know how you guys wake up early in the morning and do all your rounds in the morning. Like today, just doing one round was like, I had to literally slog and wake up to do that one round. So it so happens not by design, by how it happens, I had to spread my 16 rounds all throughout the day. So that day the 16 rounds were not over. So I had to I'm doing this Krishna chanting, and then I'm getting tempted for my mom's crab curry. It was like that day I was like this close, See, I'm not into this pathway completely. I'm still in the trial process. Even if I go back, nobody's going to ask me, and nobody is going to question me, and I can tell Krishna, sorry. I tried you though. It's not. It's not syncing up with me or something. But that day, my 16 rounds were not over. Probably that getting that 16 rounds in that day literally helped me to stick to this principle. But I do get tempted,
That's good. Yeah, no, we all get tempted, and each of us has a different specific thing that tempts us. For some, it's crab curry. For others, it's
coconut crab curry.
Coconut crab curry. And for others, it's, binge watching something on Netflix or whatever, or sports or whatever. We all have our things that keep us distracted from Krishna. And so it's important that we notice these, like you did. You noticed it. You understood that, okay, well, I'm tempted because it's something that I grew up with, and it's,
that's my
I
staple.
know I like the flavor, and my mom makes it. It's also a connection with the family. It's, it's all of these things, but at the same time, even though you were tempted, you still refrain. So Krishna actually appreciates that when you actually really want something, but you don't do it. That's actual renunciation. It's not like, so if, for example, if I've just eaten, right, and I'm completely full, and then I walk by and I see my favorite food to the right of me not eating that's not renunciation, because I'm completely full. I couldn't eat it if I wanted to, right? That's just whatever, I walk right by it. That's not really renunciation. It's if I'm really hungry and then I see it and then I really want it, but then I still refrain. That's actual renunciation. So renunciation doesn't just mean refraining from something. It means refraining from something that you actually really want, but you shouldn't have. And then you still refrain from it. So that actually has a lot of power in it. Krishna sees that, and he rewards you for making the right decision.
Okay, thank you. And I don't know what is this magic of the 16 rounds of this mantra, but I don't know. It's really like very. It has become a daily routine, and no matter what happens, like even it's like 12, I try to get it like 12 midnight. I make sure I finish the 16th round by the 12th midnight. Sometimes work, family, cleaning the dishes, like I have to be part of the family, right? So I have to do my chores. It's not like, I'm doing Krishna conscious, I'm not going to wash the dishes. No, I have to do that too.
Yeah.
Chanting is more important than taking part. I have to put this in the mix, like in the daily mix. And sometimes my last round gets done at like 11:59. Like I'm like, oh, it has to be today. It has to be today. So I'm doing that. I don't know. There is some magic in this mantra. I don't know. It defies logic.
It sure does, because logic is material and the mantra is spiritual, and yeah, it absolutely does. So keep up that sincerity and that determination. That's what's gonna help you make spiritual advancement.
Yeah. I'm giving myself like 1 year's time. Like, let me see how this syncs up with me. Like, but I think taking one day at a time.
Yes, good. Keep up the good work.
Thank
That's
you.
good.
Thank you.
Good advice for all of us.
Thank you.
Anything else?
Okay, thank you, Charachandra Prabhu.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. Very nice class. Appreciate the way you approached it. Also emphasizing on, the principles behind why we do things. Very, very important for us to always remember that. And for Renika, so many of the devotees, we have our stories of when we made that decision to stop eating meat and kind of turn to Krishna. And I encourage devotees as they meet Renika, maybe they can share their stories as well to help give her support. I'll share you my story sometime, Renika. But a lot of devotees from the West that grew up in meeting families had that one experience when they had that kind of moment of epiphany when they said, "Okay, I'm going to say no today." And they turned to Krishna, and as Charachandra Prabhu said, Krishna does reward you. You get empowerment when you refrain from those temptations and turn to Krishna. Thank you, Charachandra Prabhu, for your guidance and wisdom. And we look forward to, I guess, 2 weeks from now when you
Thank you.
return from us. During that time, we'll be in Kartik.
Kartik
begins for us on Saturday, October 31st, this upcoming Saturday, and we're going to be kicking it off with the 24-hour kirtan at the temple. So those that can join, please stop by the temple sometime between 6 o'clock p.m. on Saturday, all the way through the Sunday feast on Sunday.
Temple's fully open now?
Not fully open. We do have restrictions. Evening times, 6:30 to 8 o'clock. Some days we've opened it up for Kirtan and Bhagavad Gita class. We have restricted numbers. Not so many people come anyway, as opposed to before. Still
Yeah.
that do stay home, but we try to spread it out at different times.
Will
So
the whole will the whole
Okay.
thing be relayed 24 hours via Zoom, or just the parts of it will be relayed via Zoom?
Probably not the whole thing via Zoom,
Oh no, I'm going to miss it.
but we haven't decided yet how to pull that off. We'll announce that closer to it. Couple other little plugs I just want to put in real quick. Starting November 4th, more information will come out this week, but we're offering a Vaishnav etiquette and behavior course. It's a 5-part course that'll discuss sadhana habits, temple etiquette, our relationship with Srila Prabhupada as the founder Acharya, relationships among devotees, and then also kirtan etiquette. And as an effort to please Srila Prabhupada and consistency with the third purpose of ISKCON, to bring the society together, we wanted to offer this course. Chandra Prabhu grew up in the temple. A lot of these experiences he relays to us are based on principles, growing up in temple life. And a lot of us never really had that benefit of doing that. I see Devati Deva Prabhu is here. He's an ashram devotee from a while ago. But a lot of devotees, they come, they learn behavior by watching other people, do things. But a lot of times we miss out on the reason why we do those things. We're offering obeisances, but what do we do when we offer obeisances? There are prayers we chant when we offer obeisances. Sometimes we see people, they go to Radhashar Bihari and then they go backwards to Srila Prabhupada, to the Guru, or to Gaur Nitai. And then we see other people, they go from Srila Prabhupada up to Radhashar Bihari. And depending on who you're looking at that particular day, you'll probably follow that person. So we learn behavior, but then there's behavior that's consistent with what Srila Prabhupada and Acharyas taught us. These etiquettes help us come closer to Krishna. They help us focus more on Krishna, avoid unnecessary obstacles that may come across our path in devotional service. And because we never really had a system to train people, to educate people in this, we wanted to develop this class to help empower and inspire the devotees in their devotional life. So more will come out about this, but I'm trying to get the word out so people can get it on their calendars. It's going to start Wednesday, November 5th in the evening, probably about 6:30, and it'll run for 5 weeks. There'll be a certificate given. There'll be kind of like quizzes given at the end so people can really pay attention.
What is the cost?
Your time.
Thank you.
Donations are accepted though. Okay, so thank you, Chair Chandra. Sorry for that little commercial.
No worries. That's great. I'm glad that that's happening. Something that I have wanted to happen for a long time. I'm glad to see it's happening.
And that example I gave about offering obeisances and the way people do it, that's just one out of probably 50 examples of the way various ways things are being done. Hopefully this will kickstart a new revolution of dedication and understanding of why we do things.
Joy.
So the meaning of obeisances, is it
Hare Krishna.
respects or is wishes? The meaning of obeisances, is it respects or regards or
We'll get into that.
that word keeps coming up all the time. I don't get it. Okay, fine.
Yeah, we'll get into that later because we're running short on time.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna. We'll see you all tomorrow morning. Vaishnavevyo.
joy.
Hare Krishna.
Hare Krishna.